Howdy, it's Nathan with the Shop Warrior channel. Here working on my 2005 Suburban again. Going to replace the AC blower motor resistor. It just came in the mail here, AC Delco part. I'll put the part number and description and a link to it in the description, so be sure and check that out. I don't know if you can hear that. There is the, yeah, if you can hear the fan kicking on. Okay, just kicked on. It's been kicking on and off. Even when we set the fan to high, it shuts off. And then back on, and then off. It just shut off. Now back on. So it seems to be a common issue with when these things start to go out, that it will shut the fan off, on and off, seemingly randomly. Let me get into showing you how this works and how to get this thing replaced. The symptoms of my system are that the fan would be turned on, everything would be functioning normally, driving along, the temperature of my engine would be normal, wouldn't even be, I think on one of the days it was around 80 degrees, so it wasn't even that hot outside. And while driving, the AC, the blower motor, the fan would just shut off, and you would feel nothing or very little coming out of the vents here. The air, then it would kick back on. The air coming out was still cold. All these controls were responsive and functioning normally. I didn't hear any engine noise, anything related to the compressor, anything in the engine bay. So the only symptom that I was having was while driving along, the air would just shut off and then randomly come back on. And it seemed to be increasing in frequency. It happened for the first time about a week ago. And then a couple days later, it would happen maybe once or twice while driving. And then it started happening 3-4 times in a drive. So it started increasing, becoming more frequent. So again, just wanted to describe kind of the symptoms, and that there's a lot of points of failure in the system. And in my case, the only symptom that I saw or experienced was simply the fan shutting off randomly. Let's open up this AC Delco part, the new resistor, and let's see what's inside. We have some instructions showing the parts and the wiring. There will be a few wires here that we're going to have to cut into or join, I believe. Here's the wiring harness. So it has these two connectors, and you can see here 3 wires that we will need to tap into some of the existing wires with. 2 screws and like a rubber washer, like a foam washer, and then the resistor itself. This is a giant heat sink, and the resistor, the job of the resistor is to control the speed of the fan. And the way that it does that, you have your car operates on 12 volts. We have 12 volts coming in, and it's going to allow anywhere between 0 and 12 volts out. And so as the voltage varies, the speed on the fan varies. So the goal, the job of this part is basically to take 12 volts in and turn that into some variance of voltage between 0 and 12 volts. And a resistor, the way it's you could think of it like we have 12 volts in, we got to do something with, if we only want 5 volts, we got to do something with the extra 7 volts. And essentially what the resistor is doing is turning that extra voltage, that little extra power, into heat. And that is what gets dissipated in these fins here, which is why this is mounted up into the box that the air flows through, so that it can cool this thing down. So any part, what I have found in my experience, is any part that generates this much heat, that needs a heat sink this big, is going to go bad over time. Electronic components that are subject to this amount of heat eventually are going to fail. My Suburban has 168,000 miles, so this seems like about the time that this should be going out. I just had to replace this same part on my Honda Odyssey. It has about 140,000 miles, or yeah, had about 140,000 miles when this part failed on it. So these parts seem to have a life of about call it 140, 150,000 miles or so. So kind of expected that this is going to go out. Coming in here on the passenger side, I've got my soldering iron and heat gun ready. And we first need to remove this cover. There are two. We look right under here. There's a little bolt, screw, and then one right here. We remove those two, and then this cover can come off. Let me double check that size. It is, yes, 9/32. I removed the two screws. Now I'm just going to, you can see, pull down, and it just slides out. Kind of finagle it around. No, wasn't connected to anything. Alright, that is out. And we can see here, let me zoom out here. This is our old resistor. We're going to unscrew that here and here, and then we'll work on our wiring. The two screws or bolts here holding this on are 7/32. So we pulled this out. You can see our heat sink there. We've got one plug here of wires, and then you can see these two wires coming out of it actually go straight here to the blower motor itself. And the rest of these wires run to the controls. Here are the parts side by side. On the bottom there is the original, and the gray one on the top is the new one. They look very much the same. Both made by Woori, looks like. Both made in Korea. The holes, mounting holes line up, and the pin connector lines up. Always nice to see. Looking at the wiring, I unwrapped this. This just had electrical tape all around it. We've just got these three wires here connected to continue on to the control panel through these. So I disconnected this from the resistor, and then this one we'll have to disconnect this back here. If we can see that. Get some light in there. The easiest way to disconnect this from the blower motor here is to use a screwdriver to push in and down on this little tab here on the bottom. So it just goes in like that. I've just cut off the old wires, the whole old wiring harness, and I'm going to strip these wires and solder in the wires from the new one. Now I would definitely suggest disconnecting your battery before you do before you strip these connections and solder anything. Always a good idea to shut the power off. Here's the old wiring harness. I just wanted to show you a few things on it after I pulled it off and inspected it. And if you can see here that this plastic is melted, kind of burned, and this one actually looks fine. This is the one that goes to the blower motor. Then if you look, the connector's there. You kind of look in the back, you can see that it's also melted a little bit around those couple of pins. And also I noticed, I mean, you can see how dirty it is, which probably didn't affect performance too much, but I also noticed when you shake it, you can hear a little rattling in there. So something has come loose. Got the two wires, or three wires rather, soldered up and shrink wrapped. The two wires, the two bigger ones, were definitely difficult to solder. I'd probably recommend using those connectors instead of soldering, but was finally able to get that done. I've got the new right here plugged into, or the wires plugged into the blower motor. And then we have the, haven't quite pushed that in yet, have the new piece in. It's just two screws. And there is a little, I was going to point this out, little rubber washer that goes on this side. And then all there is to do is connect this up, and then I'll tape up these wires in a similar fashion as to how it was when I opened it. And then we'll put the cover back on and we'll be done. Alright, so I've got the cover put back on and the new part installed. Now we just need to go for a test drive and make sure the thing works. Thanks for watching. I've got a lot more videos on this 2005 Suburban if you want to follow along on the journey and my upgrading and fixing, and if you have more issues, I can help you with. Be sure and subscribe. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, found it helpful. Alright, thanks for watching.